Oh, I know the lore of GTFO is really complicated, but could you try to explain a few words? Uh, okay. GTFO lore. In a few words, huh? Um, we're in an underground complex. We are prisoners, each with our own unique backstories. We are being forced by a mysterious entity known as the Warden, and that's all we know about them, who is forcing us to go down into this complex that is destroyed to all heck and is infested with these weird fungus type creatures. And we are doing our best to survive and do what the Warden is telling us. And there's some ultimate goal as to why we're doing all of these tasks that is given to us, but we have no clue what it is ourselves. However, we are working together with other prisoners who have sort of, quote, broken their programming, who are trying to help us break ours. That way we can start a revolution down here and go against the Warden and take back our lives and find a way to escape to the surface. Although it is unknown if the surface is even really a good place to go back to due to a incredibly infectious and deadly disease that apparently affected almost the entire world within a year. And that's sort of a basic summary. Lately, the lore of GTFO has been getting incredibly confusing, though, due to alternate dimensions and whatnot being dragged into the lore, because it is believed that there are many, many different versions of us, the prisoners. But I have not delved deep into the lore ever since Rundown 7 was introduced, just because I haven't really had the proper time to do so. So anything that was introduced with R7 or Alt 1 and 2, I'm a little bit iffy on. But I believe it is believed by the community that Rundown 8, or how phrase it, Rundown 7, which is technically the latest rundown in the timeline, I guess, we sort of fought back against the Warden and implemented a virus that's giving us control of the system. Biocom is what's called, which is what's used to control basically everything down the complex. So it is believed that now that we technically have control of the system, Rundown 8, we might stop doing stuff for the Warden and we might be doing stuff for our teammates to try to find a way to escape this place and fight back. But it is my theory that, honest to goodness, that's not actually what we should be doing. Yeah, that's what I think Rundown 8 might be, because that's what we did in R7. R7, like all throughout it, when we were helping out Shafer gain Henriksen out of hydrostasis and whatnot, without him going absolutely crazy and trying to kill us, because simple summary, R7A1, while we were playing through halfway through the level, Shafer brings one person out of hydrostasis that he knows can help us, but because he did it improperly, the guy went absolutely insane and tried to kill Shafer, which resulted in Shafer having to kill him. I believe his name was Maddox. So Shafer did some more research, which is why he sent us into B1, because we were collecting some plant samples for him, which were needed to safely bring people out of hydrostasis without them going insane. C1, he brings out Henriksen, and then he helps Henriksen get rid of the chip that's in him, which is basically the programming. With that chip, if Shafer just told Henriksen, operative, you want to complete the mission, like a robot, Henriksen would reply back with, yes, I want to complete the mission, or whatnot. So he helped him get rid of that chip. That way, the Warden system couldn't basically tell Henriksen what to do. Although it was a very painful process. So with that, they start working together to look for a way. That ties into C3 a little bit. C3, the level that has that alarm that just constantly spawns in enemies, that was because Henriksen was trying to backdoor something and try to get some access to security he shouldn't have, but Shafer rushed him, which caused him to mess up, and he triggered the alarm, which is why in that level, it tells you get to extraction, but you can't go there right away because the doors along the way are locked, and until a certain amount of time passes, they don't unlock. Yes, those are humans. HSU is or hydrostasis is basically cryostasis. It's just with water instead. So your entire life system is put on hold. But the downside to it is going into hydrostasis for too long basically mind wipes you. It just makes you forget almost everything that happens, or everything that happened to you beforehand, which is why oftentimes you come out incredibly confused. Which is also why it works perfectly for us because it's so much easier for the warden to control us when we literally have no idea what's going on. Combine that with the chip that just gives us our info, which is why we see stuff appear, because that's the system actually directly talking to us. It makes us the perfect worker units. R7D1 though, basically Henriksen comes up with a plan, but the issue is he doesn't think it's going to work because we need to go to the mainframe, which we can't gain access to. But then Shafer, at one point Henriksen said the word breaks, which made Shafer realize, wait a second, there is a way to get them there. So in R7D2, we're sent down to do a specific task, but the thing is we're not actually doing that task because Shafer stops our lift halfway down, which causes us to be in the mainframe area because the place we were supposed to go to was further beneath it. Which is why the objective in R7D2 tells you don't do anything. Just sit there until your objective stack updates properly. We ignore that. We go to the mainframe and we insert a data stick into it, which has the virus that Henriksen put together. That is the reason why in R7D2, literally the entirety of the complex is coming after us because alarms are going off like crazy since we're in an area we should not be in no matter what. When we get out, the virus is implemented, and then R7E1, the final level of R7, we're restarting the mainframe's reactor because it needs to do a reboot for the virus to take effect. So in that level, it's like, hey, get to the reactor, put it in, and then lay low until we actually tell you what it is you need to do. And that's the ending of R7E1, restarting the reactor and then escaping with our lives. So the thing about that is it's not necessarily the alarms are being triggered to summon enemies, it's more so it's to summon Kovac units. Because the thing about this entire underground facility was it's a mining complex, but they discovered some stuff down here, so they actually brought in Kovac security, which think of like special ops forces from any video game you could think of. They're the real deal. You get on their bad side, they kill you. They do not care whatsoever. So Kovac has a lot of areas down here that they protect. The mainframe is part of that, so those alarms going off was more so meant to tell you, like, get out of here now, or Kovac is about to come in and they're going to kill you, because they have been commanded to kill you on sight, because you're in a restricted area, which we see in the lore. Many people just flat out got killed by Kovac because they stepped 2 feet into a restricted area that they weren't supposed to be in. It was very, very strict. So those alarms weren't meant for the enemies, but more so for Kovac. But Kovac is basically all in hydrostasis right now due to a gigantic outbreak that happened to sleepers. So that's why Kovac security doesn't actually show up and attack us. But from my understanding, the ending of R7E1, so the ending of Rundown 7, that is us technically gaining control. We don't know if it worked perfectly due to, we don't know if the virus actually worked, but if it did work, then Henriksen and Shafer have control of the biocom system, which is the automated system that controls basically everything down here. Stuff you do on terminals, that's biocom. When you check where resources are, or where key cards are, or even personnel with HSUs, that's biocom, that entire system. So we have control of that, which would also theoretically mean we have control of the lifts, so we can drop down wherever we want to the complex, and we also have control of the security doors. But that's all theoretical. So that's why people speculate Rundown 8 will be us doing stuff for Shafer and the Warden, or will be us doing stuff for Shafer and Henriksen, not the Warden. Henriksen, so no, it talks about him a little bit in R7, but it was hidden away in terminals that you probably didn't see. He's basically an engineer, very smart guy, which was why Shafer woke him up, because at some point Shafer did a lot of research. Shafer is a rogue element who he's been surviving down here for quite a while now by using the vents and whatever he could think of. And he was doing a lot of research on people who he could free or people he could bring out HSUs to help us. But he was doing research on like, hey, who can I get to help me in this revolution? Who's smart, whose skills will be what I need? There's actually a level in Rundown 6 where you walk into a room and you see it's Shafer's room. He's got like a little whiteboard of names that he's crossed off and whatnot, or circled. So he woke up Henriksen because of that. Shafer is also looking for the 4 of us in particular because he knows how efficient we are. He sees how many missions we do and the fact that we just don't ever seem to die. So he's like, hey, if I need people to do some dirty work for me, these are the 4 people, which is why he contacts us every so often in some rundowns because he wants us to be part of his team. Yes, there are other prisoners doing for missions. We're just incredibly efficient because we just never seem to die. There's actually some missions in rundown 5 and 6, or actually 2. Chris, R2B1. Remember that level that has that reactor, or not the reactor? The level that has that class 7 alarm you had to do that you all were struggling with for a little bit? That was one of them. That mission, our objective is quite literally to make a distraction for the other prisoners who are doing something elsewhere in the complex. And the reason we're sent to be the distraction is because the AI system, Biocom, it knows how good we are. So it realizes that if it's a really difficult mission, which, distracting enemies for a very long period of time and just summoning hordes of enemies on us, pretty difficult. So it knows we're the people to send down in order to do it. And if we fail, like other groups have failed, it takes that information and it uploads it to us in a way. So it's like, oh, hey, I sort of know what's going on here. It's weird. It's like a dream. I recognize this place because the previous group, what they did is sort of sent to us to give us a better chance of survival. Which is a bit of a weird thing in it. It's pretty sketchy. What else? Yeah, so that's R7. That's what we believe R8 is going to be. We're doing stuff for Shafer and Henriksen, and we're going against the Warden. But some newer lore has sort of made me believe that that's not what we actually want to do. I don't think the Warden's an evil entity that's keeping us locked down here and preventing us from going anywhere. Rather, we're trying to save humanity. As I mentioned earlier, there's a very deadly disease that was very infectious, and it kills people or turns them into sleepers at a very rapid rate. And almost the entire world was affected by it within a year, and hundreds of thousands of people were dead. I don't know the exact number, but I remember that it was significant enough to the point where I realized, damn, this is a very serious disease. And there's no cure. No matter what people do, they can't find a cure to it because it seems almost alien-like. But something they discovered. So it's a parasitic disease or virus, and these sleepers carry it. They're part of the issue, and it's very easily transmitted to people. So you have to wonder, how is it that us, the group of prisoners who fight people all the time, don't have it? Well, the answer was revealed to us recently, and it's hydrostasis. Apparently, going into hydrostasis, it freezes every, function in your body. You just seem to freeze in time. And so does the virus. And it actually kills the virus, which is why no matter how many times we get attacked by enemies, we seem to not have this non-feed virus that would have killed us almost immediately. Or not immediately, but So I believe the people in charge of this entire complex, the quote warden and everybody behind it, the higher-ups who originally built this place, they realize that the only way we're going to save humanity is we need time, and time is something we don't have. So we need to use hydrostasis. So I believe the objectives the warden gives to us, that's all leading up to us trying to find the cure to this disease. That way, once we know what it is, we can administer it to everybody, and we can actually save the planet from complete extinction due to this virus. So I feel like the whole breaking our programming and doing what Shafer and Henriksen wants is not a good idea, because if we, raise up a revolution and, quote, escape to the surface, we might be basically taking humanity's last hope and leading them away from their objective. And if we go out to the surface and we don't go back to hydrostasis, we will probably die pretty darn quickly. So that's what I believe anyway. That's why this whole thing is going on right now. It's just we're trying to find the cure, and a lot of stuff we do in rundown 6 leads me to believe that is the case. Even rundown 7, because it keeps continuing the story of a genome database, and it talks about how we need to find the original genome to the virus. That way we can make the cure. It's a very interesting plot twist. Now, I'm not 100% certain if this is true, because a lot of the lore in this game is fragmented to the point where it's hard to really piece stuff together. But assuming it's actually accurate, then that's going to be the ultimate plot twist. I think at some point, Shafer and Henriksen, they're going to discover what the reason is behind all this. They're going to come across some files and figure it out. And they're going to realize that the whole escape from the game, or escape from this place and get back to the surface, is not what we want to do. What we need to do, weirdly enough, is continue doing what the warden tells us, risking our lives to these creatures, and finding out what the cure is, and using that cure so we can save all of humanity, or at least whatever is left from it. Because you can imagine a large majority of the population is probably already dead to whatever the heck this thing is. Really, the only people left alive are probably the higher-ups and the very few unfortunate people in isolation. So, sort of a morbid thought that even if we do find the cure, we might not be saving much. We might only save 1% of humanity, and that 1% are the greedy higher-ups who only really care about saving themselves. So who knows? Maybe we'll also say, screw it, and we won't save humanity, and we'll just let all of life just die. Or the alternate theory, go to a different dimension, because there's dimension hopping in this game, so maybe saving humanity isn't the objective. Maybe it's finding a dimension, just like ours, that doesn't have the virus in it, and find a way to escape to it so we can basically continue our lives without sleepers and the infected and all that stuff. But that is the part where my knowledge starts to fizzle out a little bit, just because I, again, haven't paid a lot of attention to the lore we've been getting recently. It also just makes me wonder where the higher-ups are currently, because originally I thought they might have gone into hydrostasis to save themselves, but then again, I think they also realize that if they go into hydrostasis, they lose their memories, or they're going to be really fragmented, and I don't know if the higher-ups would want to do that. So they might be isolated somewhere trying to keep or stay alive, assuming they never got infected within the first place. But and the other thing about the virus is, like I said, incredibly infectious. Like, they tried so many different things to like hazmat suits and whatever to prevent getting it. Parasite does not care. Like, the Parasite literally just gives you the middle finger and says, oh, you came anywhere within a mile of me? Guess what? You've got non-virus. Have fun with that sucker. So. And also, it is believed, I don't know if I stated it, but it is also believed that the virus is what turns people into these creatures. Because there is a lot of evidence that shows that this isn't just simply an alien race that existed. This is, like, people turning into these things. You can actually even see human features in these creatures. Like, you can see the mouths, the ears, the eyes. Like, you can see all of it. But there's also a way they can reproduce themselves, because we see the cocoons, which are respawn things, and also birthers, which birthers will literally give birth to a ton of baby strikers. So that's one of the things I love about this game. Like, I love the gameplay and the aspects and the atmosphere, but the lore is what really dragged me into it, which wasn't there in the beginning. We didn't really get lore in this game until Rundown 2, sort of, but more so until Rundown 3. And then Rundown 4, they lore dumped us. Like, Rundown 4, I think we got 50 lore logs throughout the terminals or something. Like, it was an insane amount. And then we got a lot of 6 and a decent amount of 7. Actually, they gave us so much information in 6 that the devs basically said, okay, we have to pull back a little bit, because if we give this much info every rundown, we're going to finish the game in like a rundown and a half. So, maybe. Well, actually, fun fact then. So, 10 Chambers. People know them as the ex-Payday 2 devs, which to some people is not a good thing to hear. But the people who... the people from 10 Chambers, they are the Payday 2 devs who didn't like the fact that the higher-ups weren't letting them have any creative freedom, and they were tired of the game basically being driven into the ground and the company ruining its own name. So they left and formed their own company, 10 Chambers, where the idea was that creative freedom for everybody who works there. Like, you don't have to worry about a higher-up telling you, no, that's a stupid idea, you can't do that, type of thing. They wanted to see themselves more like a family. So 10 Chambers started off as only, I believe, 7 people. And of those 7 people, only 2 of them were programmers. So Rundown 1, 2, and I think even 3 were developed by like 2 or 3 people. And that's it. It wasn't until Rundown 4 they actually started increasing the dev team and hiring a lot of people. I think right now they're sitting around 90 people in the company. And an official story writer was not hired until Rundown 3 was created, which is why we didn't get a ton of lore until Rundown 4, just because they didn't want to risk, putting stuff in the game and then trying to think, okay, no, we want to take it a different direction. So 1 has no lore in it, and 2 at all. 2 had practically nothing, and 3 only had a smidget, and it was very vague information. Then Rundown 4, we were given a ton of information about the game and the world, and then Rundown 5, we were given a ton of information about our playable characters, who we are, our backstories, what we did, all that stuff. Which, all of us are messed up people. One of us killed like 20 soldiers because we believe God told us to. One of us, I think, witnessed their entire family come to unfortunate deaths and therefore is traumatized. One of them has been in the army for a while and has basically at the moment where he doesn't care who he kills. He can kill a woman or a child in cold blood and he just doesn't feel anything. Or no, I got that slightly mixed up. One of us is a scientist who somehow have a point in creating these creatures and therefore felt guilty. And one of us tried to blackmail somebody in Kovac and wound up in the Legion program because of it. But yeah, all 4 of our playable characters are very messed up people. Really, one of the few non-messed up people would be Shafer himself, funnily enough, because he was just a worker. He was just a miner, like a construction worker here at the complex, but unfortunate Shafer, so he was alive when the giant sleeper outbreak happened down here, and a bunch of people got killed because of sleepers, and the virus became rampart. But he was able to survive. And he wanted to make his way to KDS Deep, which is where Kovac HQ is. Which actually, fun fact, KDS Deep is actually R5E1, the level itself. He wanted to get there because he figured if anybody can help keep him alive, it would be Kovac security. So he snuck his way in there, but got trapped and couldn't get out because he shut the doors behind him and he didn't know how to get them back open. And when he got there, he found that everybody in Kovac were hidden away in HSU units for the whole self-preservation type thing. And he then realized there's nothing he can do. Like, he can't survive. He's gone like a week or something without eating or drinking. He can't get out of KDS Deep itself. So he had 2 options. One was let himself die, and the other was hop into a hydrostasis unit when he knew full well what would happen to him if he ever came out of it. So his is actually a bit of a tragic tale. He knew, like I said, die or come out a completely different person who had no clue who the hell he was before and what happened. And then at some point, he got released from hydrostasis. I think it was with another team of prisoners. Everybody on his squad died, except for him. He fled and found a way to not go back to hydrostasis, and now he's been surviving in the complex ever since then, using the vents or just anything that he could do to survive. It's actually believed that's the reason why you sometimes hear thumping in a level just randomly in the vents is because it's him, and he's actually watching over us right now. Yes, Xander, that's correct. I forget exactly what level that was, but he was thumping in the vents. Xander, do you remember what message he said? Because I know that's happened twice now, and one of them was R4B1. Yeah, it was the R4B1 instance, and then I think alternate R1D1, he does it again. And I think when he said it that time, it was escape or something, Morse code. Escape and R4B, yeah. Because at one point, Shafer left a lot of audio logs for us to basically say, like, he was telling us, hey, go deeper. Because the thing about Shafer is he wanted to trust us, but at the same time, he knew we were probably mindless drones. So it's not like he could just casually walk up to us and say, hey, break your programming, come with me. Because more likely than not, we would either ignore him or we would kill him. Because the other thing, too, is the biocom system knows he's escaped, and it's probably not happy. So if it knew that we interacted with him, it would probably just tell us, hey, kill that man right there in front of you. So he interacted us with audio logs, basically telling us we had to prove ourselves to him, and we had to go deeper, and we had to go and find and retrieve something for him to show that we could actually think for ourselves and help him out a bit. Which supposedly we did that in like R5 and R6, which is why in R7 he talked with us a whole lot more because he's like, okay, I can actually sort of trust him. R6A1, as a matter of fact, when you get to the final security door, he literally talks to you directly, or not in person, but through the system saying, hey, do you remember me? Like, once again, trying to check, do you remember me after all that hydrostasis you've been in? But he's a very, for good reasons, very skeptical person who also is a bit scrambled just because he hasn't been in hydrostasis for a while, but good lord, his brain is not doing pretty good after it. He is very scrambled, and he can barely even keep his own thoughts in order half the time because of how weird it is. Yeah, 6 and 7, he recovered a bit of his sanity, but even when you listen to him, you can tell he stutters a bit because he's uncertain about a lot of things. Having Henriksen, another sane person who can talk with him, has actually been helping him quite a bit. So, oh, by the way, I just autopiloted there, Chris. So I C-foamed and mined the door, not even knowing if we were